Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 7, Part 2, The Sorting Hat. Okay, so this is where I left off in the other recording. Harry grinned back, and there in the center of the high table, in a large gold chair, sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry recognized him at once from the card he had got out of the chocolate frog on the train. Dumbledore's silver hair was the only thing in the whole hall that shone as brightly as the ghost. Harry spotted Professor Quirrell, too, the nervous young man from the Leaky Cauldron. He was very peculiar, in a large purple turban, and now there were only 3 people left to be sorted. Turpin Lisa became a Ravenclaw, and then it was Ron's turn. He was pale green by now. Harry crossed his fingers under the table, and a second later the hat shouted Gryffindor. Harry clapped loudly with the rest as Ron collapsed into the chair next to him. "Well done, Ron. Excellent," said Percy Weasley pompously across Harry as Zambini Blaze was made a Slytherin. Professor... Okay, let me pause and go to the next page. McGonagall rolled up her scroll and took the sorting hat away. Harry looked down at the empty gold plate and had only realized how hungry he was. The pumpkin pasties seemed ages ago. Albus Dumbledore had got to his feet. He was beaming at the students, his arms open wide, as if nothing could have pleased him more to see them all there. "Welcome," he said. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words. And here they are. Nitwit, Blubber, Oddment, Tweak. Thank you." He sat down. Everyone clapped and cheered. Harry didn't know whether to laugh or not. "Is he a bit mad?" asked Percy uncertainly. "Mad," said Percy airily. "He's a genius, best wizard in the world. But he is a bit mad. Yes, potatoes, Harry?" Harry's mouth fell open. The dishes in front of him were now piled high with food. He had never seen so many things to eat on one table: roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, bacon, steak, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, chips, Yorkshire pudding, peas, carrots, gravy, ketchup, and for some reason mint humbugs. The Dursley had never exactly starved Harry, but he had never been allowed to eat as much as he had liked. Dudley had always taken away anything that Harry really wanted, even if it made him sick. Harry piled his plate with a bit of everything except the humbugs, and began to eat. It was all delicious. That does look good," said the ghost in the ruff sadly, watching Harry cut up his steak. "Can't you?" "I haven't eaten for nearly 500 years, said the ghost. "I don't need to, of course, but one does miss it. I don't think I've introduced myself. Sir Nicholas de Mumsy Porpington at your service, resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower." "I know who you are," Ron said suddenly. "My brothers told me about you. You're nearly headless Nick." "I would prefer that you called me Sir Nicholas de Mimsy," the ghost began stiffly, but the sandy-haired Seamus Finnegan interrupted. "Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless?" Sir Nicholas looked extremely miffed, as if their little chat wasn't going the way he wanted. "Like this," he said irritably. He seized his left ear and pulled. His whole head swung off his neck and fell onto his shoulders as if it was on a hinge. Someone had obviously tried to behead him, but had not done it properly. Looking pleased at the stunned looks on their faces, nearly headless Nick flipped his head back on his neck, coughed, and said, "So, new Gryffindors, I hope you're going to help us win the house championship this year. Gryffindor has never gone so long without winning. Slytherin have got the cup 6 years in a row. The Bloody Baron's becoming almost unbearable. He's the Slytherin ghost." Harry looked over at the Slytherin table and saw a horrible ghost sitting there with blank staring eyes, a gaunt face, and robes stained with silver blood. He was right next to Malfoy, who, Harry was pleased to see, didn't look too pleased with the seating arrangement. How did he get covered with blood? asked Seamus with great interest. I never asked, said nearly headless Nick delicately. When everyone had eaten as much as they could, the remains of the food faded from the plates, leaving them sparkling clean as before. A moment later the puddings appear, and blocks of ice cream in every flavor you could think of, apple pies, treacle tarts, eclairs, and jam donuts, trifles, strawberries, rice pudding. As Harry helped himself to a treacle tart and turned to face and talk turned to their families. I'm half and half, said Seamus. My dad's a muggle. Ma'am didn't tell him she was a witch till after they were married. Bit of a nasty shock for him. The others laughed. What about you, Neville? Well, my gran brought me up, and she's a witch, said Neville, but the family thought I was a muggle for ages. My great-uncle Algy kept trying to catch me off guard and force some magic out of me. He pushed me off the end of the Blackpool Pier once. I nearly drowned, but nothing happened until I was 8. Great-uncle Algy came around for tea, and he was hanging me out of an upstairs window by the ankles when my great-aunt offered him a meringue, and he accidentally let go. But I bounced all the way down the garden and into the road. They were really pleased. Gran was crying, and she was so happy, and you should have seen their faces when I got here. They thought I might not be magic enough to come, you see. Great-uncle Algy was so pleased he bought me my toad. On the other side, Percy, Weasley, and Hermione were talking about lessons. I do hope they start right away. There's so much to learn, and I'm particularly interested in transfiguration. You know, turning something into someone else. Of course, it's supposed to be very difficult. You'll be starting small, just matches into needles, that sort of thing. Harry, who was starting to feel warm and sleepy, looked at the high table again. Hagrid was drinking deeply from his goblet, and Professor McGonagall was talking to Professor Dumbledore. Professor Quirrell, in his absurd turban, was talking to a teacher with greasy black hair, a hooked nose, and sallow skin. It happened very suddenly. The hook-nosed teacher looked past Quirrell's turban straight into Harry's eyes, and a sharp, hot pain shot across his forehead. Ouch! Harry clapped his hand to his head. What is it? Nothing. The pain had gone as quickly as it had come. Hard to shake off was the feeling that Harry had got from the teacher's look, a feeling that he didn't like Harry at all. Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell? Asked Percy. Oh, you know Quirrell already, do you? No wonder he's looking so nervous. That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but he doesn't want to. Everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts, Snape. Harry watched Snape for a while, but Snape didn't look at him again. At last the puddings too disappeared, and Professor Dumbledore got to his feet again. The hall fell silent. Ahem. Just a few more words now. We are all fed and watered. I have a few short-of-term notices to give you. First years should note that the forest in the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. A few of the older students would do well to remember as well. Dumbledore's twinkling eyes flashed in the direction of the Weasley twins. I have been asked by Mr. Filch, the caretaker, to remind you that no magic should be used between classes in the corridors. Quidditch trials will be held the second week of the term. Anyone interested in playing for their house team should contact Madame Hooch. And finally, I must tell you this year that the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry laughed, but he was one of the few who did. He's not serious, he muttered to Percy. He must be, Percy, said Percy, frowning at Dumbledore. It's odd, because he usually gives us a reason why we're not allowed to go somewhere. The forest is full of dangerous beasts. Everyone knows that. I do think he might have told the prefects at least. And now, before we go to bed, let us sing the school song, cried Dumbledore. Harry noticed that the other teachers smiled, had become rather fixed. Dumbledore gave his wand a little flick as he was trying to get a fly off the end of it, and a long golden ribbon flew out of it, which rose high above the tables and twisted itself, snake-like, into words. Everyone picked their favorite tune, said Dumbledore, and off we go. And the school bellowed, Hogwarts, Hogwarts, Hoggywarts, Hogwarts, teach us something, please. whether we be old or bald, or young with scabby knees. Our heads could do with filling, and with some interesting stuff, for now they're bare and full of air, dead flies and bits of fluff. So teach us something worth knowing, bring it back what we forgot, just do your best, we'll do the rest, and learn until our brains all rot. Everyone finished the song at different times, and at last only the Weasley twins singing along to a very slow funeral march. Dumbledore conducted their last lines with his wands, and when they finished, he was one of those who clapped the loudest. "Ah, music," he said, wiping his eyes, "a magic beyond all we do here. And now, bedtime, off you trot." The Gryffindor first years followed Percy through the clattering crowds, out of the great hall and up the marble staircase. Harry's legs were like lead again, but only because he was so tired and full of food. He was too sleepy to be surprised that people in the portraits along the corridors whispered and pointed as they passed, or twice that Percy had led them through doorways behind hidden sliding panels, hanging tapestries. They climbed more staircases, yawning and dragging their feet, and Harry was just wondering how much further they had to go when they came to a sudden halt. A bundle of walking sticks was floating in mid-air above them, and as Percy took a step towards them, they started throwing themselves at him. "Peeves," Percy whispered to the first years, "a poltergeist." He raised his voice. "Peeves, show yourself." A loud, rude-like sound, like an air being let out of a balloon, answered. "Do you want me to go get the Bloody Baron?" There was a pop, and a little man with wicked dark eyes and a wide mouth appeared, floating cross-legged in the air, clutching walking sticks. "Ooh," he said with an evil crackle. "Icky firsties, what a fun." He swooped suddenly at them, and they all ducked. "Go away, Peeves, or the Baron will hear about this. I mean this," barked Percy. Peeves stuck out his tongue and vanished, dropping the walking sticks on Neville's head. They heard him zooming away, rattling coats of armor as he passed. "You'll want to watch for Peeves," said Percy as they set off again. "The Bloody Baron's the only one who can control him. He won't even listen to us prefects. Here we are." At the end of the corridor hung a portrait of a very fat woman in a pink silk dress. "Password," she said. "Caput Draconius," said Percy, and the portrait swung forward to reveal a round hole in the wall. They all scrambled through it. Neville needed a leg up, and found themselves in the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, round room full of squashy armchairs. Percy directed the girls through one door to their dormitory, and the boys through another at the top of the spiral staircase. They were obviously in one of the towers. They found their bed at last, 5 four-poster beds hung with deep red velvet curtains. Their trunks had already been brought up too. Too tired to talk much, they pulled on their pajamas and fell into bed. "Great food, isn't it?" Ron muttered to Harry through the hangings. "Get off, Scabbers, he's chewing my sheets." Harry was going to ask Ron if he had any of the treacle taught, but fell right to sleep at once. Perhaps Harry had eaten a bit too much, because he had a strange dream. He was wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which kept talking to him, telling him he must transfer to Slytherin at once because it was his destiny. And Harry told the turban he didn't want to be in Slytherin, and it got heavier and heavier, and he tried to pull it off, but it only tightened painfully. And there was Malfoy laughing at him as he struggled with it. Then Malfoy turned to the hook-nosed teacher Snape, whose laugh became high and cold. There was a great burst of green light, and Harry woke sweating and shaking. He rolled over and fell asleep again, and when he awoke the next day, he didn't remember the dream at all.